Welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. I am your host, your step-in host for a couple of episodes. So I'm Lauren Rowney. As you might know, you haven't heard my voice for a little while. And I'm joined today with the lovely Gracie Elvin.
G'day. I'll say the g'day for you today because you're hosting.
And stepping in because Abby has just gone on maternity leave. And for those who know Abby and are following the podcast religiously, she just gave birth to a beautiful, healthy little girl. So sending all our love to Abby. But stepping in for Abby today is Georgie Howe. Welcome, Georgie.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I keep looking at your Zoom name and it throws me off.
Oh, yeah. Quite often for work, I have my boss's name because I use his account. So it comes up as like Mark. It throws people quite often. But I'm trying to be Abby today, but big shoes to fill. So I'm not actually going to try. I'm just going to run with it and see, how I go as podcast host. Gracie just reminded me.
Add your own flavor. Great.
Yeah, just be you. That's more than enough.
So it's going to be chaotic. That's good. We'll embrace the chaos. But yeah, I've missed a few podcasts. It was pretty much the Aussie crew that was taking the lead over the summer. And sadly, the summer of racing, the pro racing has come to an end. I guess Gracie and Georgie, you can maybe talk a little bit about what's happening in Australia now that the pros are leaving town and the Pro Velo series taken off. And I think there's been already a few rounds. But how are you feeling? Because I know that when the summer came to an end, it was always like this, like a bit of a sad feeling. I mean, as a pro, but now as retired athletes. Yeah. How does that feel?
Well, I think Georgie and I might have different feelings just because Georgie's at a different stage, I guess, to where I'm at. It's funny having a lot of distance now from racing. I guess this is like season 5, I guess, that I haven't raced. And I feel like my broadcast brain is really finally kicking in and I'm seeing things differently. I'm thinking differently when I talk to people. So yeah, it's like a weird feeling. Like there's still a lot of those old feelings there of the cadence of the year and one chapter of the season finishes, but that means the next chapter's coming. And if anyone knows, I love the classics. So when the summer of cycling's over, that's actually, I don't know, I get more excited because we're getting closer to the classics. But nowadays it's one of my few chances to see people face to face, old friends and teammates and staff, and getting some of those nice contact points, just catching up as friends, but also trying to get a bit of the goss because I'm so out of the loop now. And just being on site for some of those races is so invaluable for that. And because like I didn't just retire now, I'm not that fresh voice in cycling anymore. I have to put more effort into getting that knowledge of who's who in the zoo and all of those little bits and pieces that it's so important to commentary. So I wish that I get more exposure to that. And that's definitely a challenge for me now. So I tried to make the most of it. I got to go to nationals in TDU. I didn't get to go to Cadell's this year. So I watched both races, the men's and women's races from my couch, which is cool too, because it's fun just being a fan sometimes, but I'm also trying to learn from lots of other commentators as well to see how I can keep improving.
Do you switch off your commentating brain when you're just watching a race as a couch potato or a couch peloton, we'll say?
Not really, because I think like every race is still relevant to what I'm trying to do, even if I'm not working at it. I certainly don't pay as much attention to men's racing. I need to do so much more homework for the men because I don't know them as well as the women. So I do just try and pay attention as much as I can. I try not to multitask too much when I'm watching racing, even though that's really easy too. It's like tough to just focus on the racing sometimes when you want to be on your phone or do jobs around the house. So I probably wouldn't watch a whole race just to like be focused, but I'll pick moments where I'll try and not multitask for a 20-minute block or an hour block or like a crucial part of the race. And obviously like the last 30K is easier to pay attention to. So for me, my brain's definitely switching on most of the time when I'm watching racing because I want to know who's who. There's so many riders that I never raced against, a lot of young riders coming through that I want to keep getting eyes on so I remember what they look like so I can pick them out quickly and not have to keep referring to the start list. And then also I'm listening to commentators because there's some really awesome commentators out there and I want to like keep improving my skills in that way. And there's a lot to learn from what sounds good and what doesn't sound good.
And you, Georgie, I mean, you've just freshly retired, fresh off the I was going to say fresh off the boat. That doesn't make sense.
No, but I'm picking up what you're putting down. I got you. It's fine. No, it was really nice. Similar to Gracie, it was great to be in Adelaide and catch up with old friends. Well, not really old, but just like, see my teammates again. Had coffees with my old Swannies and got to catch up with, the women that, used to race against. And I think it's really nice that in cycling you view each other like your colleagues. And so, yes, you might be competing against each other, but off the bike, there is that real respect for one another, and you can be friendly and catch up with each other about things that are just normal. So that was really nice to see. And then, was able to get down to Geelong and watch Cadell's, and that was really nice. But it's sad that it's the circus, so to speak, is moving to the other parts of the world. But similar to Gracie, I'm really excited to see what happens in the classics. Also similar to Gracie, they're my favorite races. And I think the Aussie summer, particularly for the women, was really indicative that this season is going to be awesome. Like the form that people are on now and the appetite that they have for racing really shows that it's going to be a really dynamic season. And I'm not sure it's going to be terribly predictable, which will be hard for the likes of Gracie in the commentary box, but great for us watching the races.
I think that's a really good segue to a point I had in our little run sheet was what takeaways can we take from the Aussie summer? I mean, we'll get into Cadell's race and what happened there, but I've often found in previous seasons, now that, it is a World Tour race and we do have some big names showing up, that there's always that one rider every year that stands out in Australia and then continues on to have like quite a special year. And for me, that was Neve Bradbury last year. She sort of showed what was to come, and she carried that form to the UAE Tour and then just continued on and had a phenomenal season. I think Ruth Winder is another athlete that comes to mind a few years ago. Even when Trek Segafredo, the first time, I think 2019, they had Leticia Paternoster as their sprinter, and she came out and people were like, who is this rider? And I remember speaking to Ina and then like, if you don't know who she is, you're not paying attention because she's a phenomenal track rider. So we expected her to win. So who do you think that rider is? I mean, I know who I think it is that's going to have this like breakout year, and I'm pretty sure a news outlet's already done quite a nice story on her. But I'm curious, predictions?
Well, it's hard to go past the two stars of the summer, which is Ali Wollaston and Noemi Ruig. Wollaston maybe isn't like a surprise. I think Ruig is more of a surprise. So I'm really excited to see how she will go. But Wollaston, you could see she's just stepped up another level again. And I'm really looking forward to seeing her go head to head with some other sprinters.
Yeah, and I think the timing of her move to FDJ Suez couldn't have come better. I mean, she had those great years, with Yolinda Hora at AG Insurance Sudal. And now it seems like she had that fantastic Olympics campaign. She did really well at the World Championships. I think she won a couple of world titles there. So you knew something was coming. She's only about 25 now, I think, roughly. And she's a rider that years ago we were talking about on the podcast. And I kept saying, I think this one has something really special. And it's coming. We're just waiting for it. And I remember chatting with your Lynn, and she said to me that she thought that Ali would be not only a great classics rider, but she really had a feeling that she could win a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Interesting. That's a scary prospect because she's also an extremely smart rider. Like we saw how she was racing Cadell's. She was very, very conservative in her energy and very smart as to where she put her energies, where would get her the biggest bang for her buck. She knew she just had to get over that last climb, and then she was going to be within a shot. So she looked after herself all race to make that happen. And my other pick, similar to Gracie, was Naomi. I think she was a real breakout star this year. She had some really good results last year, so it wasn't like so much of a surprise for her to come in on good form, but maybe to come in on good form this early in the season was a bit of a surprise. And I had they intercepted my very peaceful ride in Geelong on one of the days, and I asked her the question, like, are you targeting the Flandrian Classics or the Ardennes? And she goes, oh no, I might do one of the Flandrian Classics, but we'll head for the Ardennes after that. So she is moving away from the Cobble Classics, which is counter to what we were talking about last podcast. We're hoping to see her maybe at Roubaix or the other Flandrian Classics.
Yeah, I think going back to my point about reading an article about Ruig, and I'm guessing it was on the Discord chat because you get so much great information on that. So if you're not an Escape member, you definitely have to sign up and join that. that she's been tipped to be one of the next sort of big Grand Tour riders, like a potential Giro winner in the future. So that was kind of where I was leaning towards, like the pick. Obviously, Wollaston, I was thinking when we were giving our predictions for TDU and the sprint stages, should have mentioned her, but I was like, it's too obvious. But Ruig, I had completely forgotten about, this article and her potential for this season. So for me, I'm really curious, and I'm hoping that if we do this draft again and I get one of the earlier picks, she's already written down. There's some names that are written down from the summer for that draft. But why don't we get back into the racing and have a little bit of a chat about Cadell's. Georgie, I didn't realize you were actually there on the ground. Where were you on the course?
I actually rode the course that morning. I did the People's Ride. So you can in the morning you can do the whole course the same as the riders do the morning of the women's race. And then I was staying down in Bowen Heads. And then I stayed with some very nice friends of mine in Geelong after that. So it was a nice weekend of getting together with friends. So it was some bike racing, but also some getting together with friends, which was really nice. Yeah, I was down there on the course. I was able to watch the after they climb Melville, so that second pinch after Shallambra. My friend's house is just off that road there when they come down before they take the right turn onto the roundabout onto the Esplanade. So I was able to be there and watch the carnage of them coming through after those two climbs. And yeah, it was weird to be on the sidelines, but you could really see the dynamics playing out in that front group for sure. When that front group came through the second time, I was like, that's a very big group to be going to the finish.
Yeah, well, the race was 141 kilometers, and I think live coverage started around 60K to go, and not much had really happened up until that point. I think
it started from flag drop on the we got straight from neutral coverage. And
really?
Australia.
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah. And it was Scott Sunderland dropped the flag, and they went the opposite way to where we've gone the past 2 years. So they started heading towards Ocean Grove and Bowen Heads and 13th Beach first. And block headwind, peloton were standstill, lower than when the neutral car was in front of them. It was, people were cracking jokes on the start line. There was nothing really going on. They were 8 minutes behind schedule in the first 25K.
Okay, so that says a lot. I mean, well, then I'm kind of glad that the coverage only started at 60 kilometers. But sometimes, with the wind conditions, you've both raced this race, and, it's quite open and exposed in a lot of areas. And that can lend itself to an exciting sort of start to the race, which is, I think, what people were hoping, particularly some teams. The main aggressor, which actually caused a 12-rider split to go, was EF Education Oatly with Kim Kadzo. And it looked like, maybe this could be a good move. It had a good range of riders that it could potentially stick, but there was lack of cooperation. So it didn't go ahead and came back together. And then it was Kadzo's teammate, Babette Vanderwolf, who then took a flyer and actually got that gap. It was Stina Daller. I'm hoping I'm saying that name correct.
You did. Well done.
Okay. The Norwegian rider, she bridged across from Coop High Tech, went across, and we had a 2-rider break. And then that was established as basically the main break of the day, just 2 riders, non-threatening at this point. It seemed like a lot of teams were quite happy with it. AG Sudal Insurance did try to make some use of the wind, but there wasn't enough. And with the change of directions, it just didn't cause the impact that they were hoping for. So at one point, that rider group of 2 got 3 minutes on the peloton. But as the bunch started heading towards Shallambra, that's where things, started kicking off and the pace picked up. And then it was pretty much game on from Shallambra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that then we also saw a lot of crashes also, from that Bells Beach QOM through to Shallambra. Like we've all seen it. The peloton has an easier race. Mines start to switch off and wheels get crossed. So that point where you mentioned before where AG tried to put it in the gutter, they started and then they realized that one of their teammates was caught in a crash behind, so then they stopped. So those crashes caused a bit of chaos. And just simply from lack of awareness. Like we saw Denis Kangelveld, Tour Down Under Stage 1 winner, pull out from one of those crashes. She and then Alyssa Pilates, QOM winner from Tour Down Under, also pull out from one of those crashes. So they were pretty substantial and a bit of a shame. But yeah, the pace really started to heat up as they hit the back of series coming into the Shallambra laps.
Well, I mean, normally in this race, that is where things start to kick off. I remember racing it and having to be on high alert during that area and making the race hard, essentially. But I thought FGJ Suez felt to be in control the whole time. And in Ali Wollaston's post-race interview, she said she just had to sit back and trust her team, which she does. They have a super strong team. I think it's like in a book, I don't know if it's the foreword or the prologue to what we're going to see from the season from this team, but they were really in control in this race. You saw her floating around. At one point, she was actually towards the back, not really nervous, just making sure she was moving herself into position where she had to be. And it was really Canyon Shram that became the aggressors in those sort of final laps of the finishing circuit there, with Tiff Cromwell being quite aggressive, I thought, trying to make some moves.
Yeah, this is the best I've seen Tiff for maybe the last couple of years. She's such a strong team captain, but you don't see her like flying when it gets to the hilly parts and deeper into the race that often anymore. And so it was probably not going to be pulled off, but it was certainly like she was going good, and she was certainly setting up some teammates to capitalize off that. So yeah, that was cool to see Tiff going. I think even Valtteri said something in the coverage about her being on a good day.
Was he in the comms box?
No, but they did interview him on the side of the road. I think he gets a little bit of on the colour stuff every Aussie race somewhere.
Like Tiff, I think, what was it, that dip before Shalamba Gracie where she really let one rip? She really started to rip the peloton apart, and she was going full noise for it. And I think because I've recalled Dygert saying something about she doesn't so much need a lead out in races as she needs a hard race. And so she'd rather her teammates attack than sit in and lead her out towards the finish. So I think that was definitely the plan. Dygert just wanted a hard race and to shell as many, hurt as many legs as she could. And Tiff certainly did that. There was some pain faces behind her.
Yeah, and of course
they wanted to get rid of Wollaston.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that of course. I mean, Wollaston was the rider to beat on that day, but based on her history as a rider, I knew she'd be there at the end, unless, like, we'll get into what happened at the finish, unless there was a flyer that, someone took a flyer and there was no cooperation in the small group that's often left behind leading into the finale. I think she's a rider also that, coming from the track, she's used to holding that really high power and being able to tap on, tap off. So, yeah, I think they threw everything at it to try and shake her. Dygert was still there in the end. There was a group of 12, so that went over the top. And then it was actually, and I think this was the rider of the day, Mia Ottestad just timed her attack to perfection. And we've actually seen this happen before where, going back to my previous point, if there isn't cooperation within that front group, if there is a strong rider like a Shabby or an Ottestad, as we saw, and they get that gap, it can hold. So she timed it beautifully. I almost thought that she's thinking two things to get over. What is that really steep climb? The last little Melville. I was thinking, okay, this is perfect if you're thinking I'm going to get dropped on this point, so I need to just get over the top, or I'm just going all in for the win. And she did, actually. When they crested Melville, she still had like a decent gap. And at one point, you couldn't even see on the screen. They were focusing on that group of, I think it was maybe 10 to 11 riders then. Wollaston was fortunate that she had Shabby with her, and then I think, who was her teammate, Crack, managed to get back across to help. But at that point, you couldn't even see Ottestad. And I was like, if they don't get organized right now in this moment, 16 seconds on this course, once you get over that dragging bit and then down to the Esplanade, it's quite easy, if the wind is in your favor, to hold it if you're a strong rider.
Yeah, you're totally right, Lauren. Like, this course it's perfect for a late attack to stick because it's so reduced over Shalamba. It's often riders without teammates that make it over in a small group, and you don't see that many with two in that final group. So there's always that confusion. Oh, who's going to chase? Do I need to spend this energy? They all look at each other, and that's it, because it's so fast to the finish. So it was a great move by Ottestad, and that's a rider we should mention as one to watch for the rest of the season as well. Like, she was fantastic at TDU as well, and she's gotten some awesome results this summer and still under the radar. So I think that it's not the last time we'll talk about her, probably, but Yeah, I think a few teams were scrambling to get organised in that chase. And I think FDJ were the ones that took the majority of that responsibility in the chase with Shabby. And there was scrambling behind, the next group behind with Crack and Sprat, and I can't remember who else, maybe Towers or someone like that. They also didn't want to fully commit to get back, but they needed to, because you can't not ride even if you've got a teammate in front, because it's a shitty situation in front as well. But you might not know that because it's all just happened so quickly. Everyone's in the red. You might not be actually getting that much information over your radio. And so this race often is won on instinct, and that's what makes it quite a good course for that reason.
Back at that stage as well. So like they can't see because there are riders just all over the shop. So yeah, Otterstad's late attack there was fantastic. Then there's actually no time to communicate back to the car and be like, what do we do now? And so then the riders themselves to at 180 beats a minute themselves into some kind of paceline to bring that rider back. All that's race done.
Yeah, and to me, you know, there's been so many moments over the past seasons where we're sitting there so frustrated and we're like, commit, just do it. Like, come on. The race is there. Like, you have the rider. No one was going to come around Wollaston, and they knew that. So for me, I was like, oh my God, they're doing it. Like, they're just getting organized, getting it done, putting everything into it to bring this rider back, because they saw the threat. They saw the race getting away from them. And that's just what we need to see more of, is just that full-on commitment. Like you were saying, it's hard to make those decisions when you're in the red. The team cars aren't there. So I'm not sure what communication's coming through, if any, at that point.
Probably not.
And that's where the riders need to be speaking on the radio. And you could see some of them going straight into their mouth, the mic, and others just, you know,
survive
looking around there. So it was just... Yeah, it's quite interesting to be looking at who's going on their radio straight away in those 5K after Shallambra.
And what I love is Otterstead came back, but then she went again.
Oh, I know. Isn't she great?
Yeah. So, I mean, and when she went again, I'm like, okay, like if they hesitate now, then I really think it's done. But they didn't. And then, of course, who took the flyer towards the end? Silke Smulders. What a fantastic start to the year.
Yeah, incredible. She started her sprint early on the right, and then Chabot was leading out Wollaston, sees Silke go, Dygett's on Wollaston's wheel. Chabot reacts to Silke, swings right, but in the process chops Dygett and nearly takes out Wollaston. So Wollaston is forced to open up her sprint on the left, and Dygett actually can't open up because of that move. And then it's Wollaston, Swinkles, who was under the radar.
Yeah.
Rug finishes up in third. But yeah, what a great late attack from Silke. She's not a sprinter. She had to do something. So yeah, it was a really brave move at the end there without any teammates.
I think that sprint, I think Wollaston was easily the quickest, and she was pretty much in perfect position. But I think Shabby did stuff it up a little bit.
I think so too.
When she caught Otterstad, she didn't keep riding. There was a slight ease in pace. It was really good for Wollaston that Smulders did that attack. If a group went past her, she could have become boxed in. So Dygett was the one that got lost out and got boxed in, but actually Wollaston could have as well, possibly. I hope in the future, Elite, that they might have had that chat of like, I need you to just go full out when we're that close to the finish, because it could have been much more messy than it was.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't clean. Like there was some front wheels nearly taken out.
It was like, I think, and Wollaston, she could have almost got relegated, I think, on how she sprinted. I think it was just okay that what she did was reacting to an attack, but she certainly closed the door pretty hard.
Yeah, and you could see Dygett just go, like, kind of jerk back. But yeah, still an awesome race. And yeah, I feel like it's we have a horse race in Australia called the Melbourne Cup, and it's extraordinarily hard to pick the winner every year. There was one year that I bet on 15 horses and 18 horses. I won it about 10%. But I feel like Cadell's Federation Road Race is exactly the same. Like it's very difficult to pick the winner, so it's very rare that the favourite wins. And Wollaston, to her credit, delivered.
Yeah, and the commentary team were saying that no rider has won this race twice. And I guess that goes back to what you just said, Georgie. It is a hard race to predict. And it all comes down to, I guess, that final 10 kilometers really dictates what's going to happen in the end.
The measure is like how easy the start is how hard the finish is going to be. And I looked at the top 10 times up Shallambra. Yes, it was a tailwind, but they went 36 seconds quicker than I did in 2023, and I made it over with front group and a half. So like Neve Fisher-Black as the QOM up Shallambra now at 3 minutes, 24 seconds. And I was just told that it was like a bomb went off as soon as they hit Shallambra, because it was just that easy at the start of the race. It wasn't hard enough for the likes of Wollaston towards the end there.
It was the perfect race actually for her. I think, going back to Gracie's point about the sprint finish, hopefully they learned a lot from that. They go back and look at it, because I think the Aussie summer is great for many different things. Like the good weather, the racing is fantastic now. And I think it's just getting better and better. We're getting more and more top riders coming down under to do this race. You know, for a team like FDJ Suez, who's gotten a bunch of new riders, it's a good opportunity to sort of start what would be the expression?
Cutting your teeth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cutting their teeth. And already figuring out these little things, okay, that the peloton's not at what we'll say 100% what we're going to see in the spring classics and the races that are coming up. But it's still hard racing. It's good racing. And it's an opportunity, just to sort of test different things, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It'd be great to see like Wollaston with a full lead out in those kinds of environments. Like they took what they learned from Cadell's and TDU as well, like that first stage, for instance, because we saw that they, like Wollaston said in a post-race interview, they learned from that. They could have been really down on themselves, but they had a very like pragmatic debrief, and then they took it into Cadell's, and evidently it paid off. Still some, teething issues, but they'll get there.
Before we go off the Aussie races, I wanted to just pick George's brain a little bit about, we didn't actually see many Aussies in the top 10s in stages or overall in TDU and Cadell's. Do you have any thoughts on why this year we've seen them slipping down the results sheets? And maybe the Kiwis are arguably better than the Aussies at the moment, even though they don't get as much support.
I mean, don't the Kiwis always like punch above their weight in every sport?
For such a battle nation.
I know, it's incredible. Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Like, they definitely have slipped down the pecking order. Like, obviously, like Spratt, we always love to see up there. There's no longer Grace Brown in the peloton. Like, Ruby had a fairly subdued TDU and Cadell's, as did Alex Manley. I was expecting a bit more from her, if I was honest, at Cadell's especially. I think it suits her quite well. I'm not sure why that is, other than the fact that they are World Tour races, and they're starting to be, as I said in previous podcasts, they're respected now by the whole cohort of the peloton. It's no longer just like the Aussies come here and, they wipe the floor. Like, look, I don't want to talk about men's racing, but I will just mention the men's TDU briefly, as like an example of like the men come here and they don't really respect the race for what it is, which is a World Tour race, to get points, to get your brand out there, to show the world what you have. And Fergus Browning is a fantastic rider, but he was not led off the front, but he rode off the front straight out of neutral every single day to get that men's quam jersey. And there was just not that fight for the breakaway that we see usually in the men's race. Whereas in the women's race, there was. Like, it was a really dynamic, unpredictable environment, unpredictable race. And I think the Aussies are just used to coming in there with a lot of form, and Euros not so much. That's kind of my hypothesis.
And we're going to see it more and more. Both races, TDU and Cadell's, they're separate race organizations, but they do work together a little bit in terms of logistics, getting riders to and from Europe. And they definitely both want to get more teams out in the future for the women's races. So that's one of their goals that they'll have from next year. I think they'll just keep building year on year, and that both races have done well in that so far. So yeah, it's tough for the Aussies because
getting
you want that confidence, those runs on the board early before you get to Europe. So it could be a bit disheartening.
Yeah, it's a different environment, that's for sure. Like, especially like we're saying we're talking about podiums, but like I think individual rides from domestiques and teams are really good. Like, I thought Sarah Roy had a really good summer, for instance.
Definitely.
Loretta Hansen was reliable as always. So I think rides for the team by Aussies were really good. But yeah, we're definitely lacking that star stepping on the top step of the podium in the Australian ranks at the moment.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've got some bigger fish to fry this year. There's still lots to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel that's what we almost have to put it down to. For a rider like Ruby, I think that might be the case. Definitely Neve Bradbury. Some people might have tipped her to maybe win TDU. But yeah, it's almost flipped in a sense that the Euros are now coming in flying, and maybe some of the Aussies are taking it a bit easier, tempering their training load towards, I don't know, the Ardennes or something like that, or the later classics. Because, Het Nieuwsblad kicks off in 4 weeks on March 1st, I believe, on Saturday. So it's not that far out, considering Cadell's was this past weekend. So if your legs aren't great there, in 4 weeks, could we still see something special from a rider like, Ruby?
Possibly. It depends on the goals of the team for the season. And I think I just had a thought then, the racing for the women is so taxing on the body now, because it is just full gas all the time from flag drop to finish. And I don't think having the Aussies peak in the summer, I don't think is no longer responsible if that's not an absolute aim for the team. So maybe Ruby, Manley, Alex Manley, they're all thinking, I'm looking towards the Ardennes, I'm looking towards Flanders. And then for someone like Neve Bradbury, it's the Giro or the Tour. I was talking to one of her teammates, and it's such a climb heavy tour that they're sending a very climb heavy team, and that definitely Neve Bradbury in that.
Yeah, and that's definitely a benefit from not being in JCO. Is that pressure to not be flying in the summer races.
Exactly. Yeah, and
that races are so valuable overseas.
And Alex it's her first year. Well, Gracie, when did you start at JCO? She started in 2015, 2016. Alex Mann.
2015.
Yeah, she was my
9 years.
She was my little baby back then.
Fresh home under 19s.
Yeah.
Oh, bless. But she's she, bless her cotton socks, but she now no longer has that pressure, so she can actually tailor her program. Not to what, obviously she wants to do well at TDU, but she can tailor her program to a season that doesn't look like peaking in the Aussie summer for the first time in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Alex is at that point in her career now that she said it in an interview. She's a mature rider. She's seasoned. This is her 9th season, which is crazy for me to think that she's been racing in the women's pro peloton. So yeah, for those Aussies who maybe didn't have the summer they wanted, I'm sure they got a good head on their shoulders, you'd hope, and that they just look towards the races that are coming in a month's time. We have a World Tour race that's coming up this week, the UAE Tour, which Gracie has actually commentated at before. Yeah, you'll be commentating that, right, Gracie? But you were actually there on the ground.
I won't commentate it this year, but 2 years ago I got to go over there and worked for the race organisation. So yeah, it's an interesting tour. I used to love going to Qatar as a rider, and it's quite similar to that. A lot of open, straight roads, crosswinds, and then the difference being to Qatar that it's got a big climb in one of the stages. It's not completely flat. So it's a funny race to take a team to, because you want pretty much a full sprint team except for one rider that can win the overall GC, which is one on that stage, unless you really fuck it up. Yeah, crosswinds, which we have seen people do.
You have seen.
Yeah, I think we saw that last. We'll talk about what the tour is. So it's from February 6th to 9th, 4 stages. Stage 1 is pancake flat, 150 kilometers. So perfect for the sprinters, of course. Stage 2 is again flat, but a shorter race, 111 kilometers. And then stage 3, as Gracie mentioned, is the stage for the one climber that might be there. And last year we saw it was a battle between Lotte Kopecky and Neve Bradbury. And that was really the stage where everyone took note of Neve Bradbury and wrote her name down and said big things are coming for her, which of course us Australians already knew. But she just really had that incredible race where she was like this, I don't know, seasoned professional who was so calm and collected. And I remember talking about it, the timing of her attack, just everything about it. So that stage 3 is a hard climb. It's 10.8 kilometers. The Jebel Hafit climb averages 7%, but peaks at 11%. 3 kilometers from the finish, where we saw, I think, Neve make her big attack last year. But of course, Kopecky managed to take the win in the end. And then that's 152 kilometers. So that's a longer day on the saddle. And then stage 4 again is a day for the sprinters. So the sprinters just have to survive that stage 3. And then they have 3 stages to basically pick and choose. So as mentioned, teams will be sending full sprint trains there. Going back to a previous point, this is a great opportunity to test out the sprint trains. And I think when Gracie was there on the ground commentating 2 years ago, she did some fantastic commentating about how organized the sprint trains within the women's peloton are now. So we have like a lot of these big teams, the World Tour teams, I would argue, there's probably 6-7 teams now that can organize themselves to perfection. So what are we thinking?
I'm definitely looking forward to that continuation of that specific professionalization of the women's peloton in that way, because obviously the men have been doing it for a long time. To see the train of one colour, which is always a good look in the end of the race. Long time ago now, it's not really recent history anymore, but yeah, 10 years ago, women's sprints were just such a washing machine, chaotic finish often. And now it's super organized. So I'm just trying to pull up a start list to see who I'm expecting. Yeah, the SD Works team is probably going to be the number one organized team, and they should be bringing Weebers.
Yeah, she's down on preliminary start lists on Pro Cycling Stats.
This is what I'm excited about. So the drama of the Tour de France Femme 2024, so much drama, so much excitement. But the sprint stage is there, and it's not often. And this is why, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're going to tune into the UAE Tour, make sure at least you watch the last 10 kilometers. Like, if you're not that interested in this style of racing, at least tune in for the last 10 kilometers of these sprint stages just to witness what I'm sure is going to be chaos, but also just perfection in terms of these teams trying to organize themselves. So I'm very excited to see the cool Weebers sprint off.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same. Really want to see it's always good to see those go head to head. And I'd love to see a couple of others put their hand up this year as well and be like, how about me? I can go against you guys too.
There's Skylar Schneider. She's back on SD Works, isn't she?
She is, yes. First season back. Very excited for that. I think her couple of years back in the States have been great for her. And she has been racing the crit scene there. So, her and her sister are two of the most accomplished sprinters in the US. And I think Skylar is now matured as a rider. She really wanted to come back to Europe to race, and she's going to be just an asset to that team.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering do we know if UAE is her first race? I think that will be I was just trying to think who will be Weebers' lead-out train.
Yeah, Garishi should be there. Will Kopecky come again, or she's...
Her focus for this year is Liège, Bastogne-Liège, Milan-San Remo, and Tour de France Femme. But did she say she would go?
Beginning a season with the focus on the Ardennes.
Okay. So I don't think Kobecki's going to be there this year.
But I just Persico and Longo are both signed on, I think, based on Pro Cycling Stats. So that will be an interesting duo, because Persico, based on her Spanish racing, is climbing very well.
I'm looking forward to, I think we talked about this last season, that we were hoping, Persico a few years ago, we were talking about her a lot, and it felt like she sort of hit a bit of a ceiling. But I think now with Elisa being on that team, we're going to see the best of her. And those two working together, I think it's going to be quite exciting.
Yeah, and then we'll have Labou for FDJ coming. So that will be, a good showing there as well. With the new colours.
We don't have the full start list yet, but it's always one of the weirdest start lists of the season. Such a weird
mix of sprinters and then one climber.
Yeah, but you're also like, are you sure you want to start your season like this? Or you're like, well, that's a good way to start your season. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's like go all the way down under for a bit of sun and racing, or just go to the UAE, which is similar time zone, not such a big flight. I think it's only 6.5, 7 hours. Get some racing, get some warm weather. I saw Elisa Longoborghini arrived a few days ago in UAE. Enjoy it, and then come back, do the final prep for the Spring Classic. So it works in that sense. I think, and us back in the day, Gracie, we would go do the summer of cycling, go to Qatar, come to Europe, get used to the horrible cold, and then prepare for the spring classics.
Yeah. I reckon you're probably going to see a third to a half of the riders who are in Australia go to the UAE tour. And then you'll see probably half the field from Europe that haven't raced yet. So it's also one of those races that you still don't know who is on good form. There's still a lot of question marks around a bunch of riders that you haven't seen race yet. So that's also good for us to see where some of those riders are at as well.
Yeah, always a good marker of form. Like Ushka Ziegert will be racing for AG, so it'll be interesting to see how she goes on the new team, particularly that team rides crosswinds quite well, but if they can deliver her to the base of the climb, it'll be interesting to see her go head-to-head. Why are you laughing, Gracie?
I wouldn't take her to this tour.
You posted on her Instagram
It's good
that she's following, and yeah, I know. I just sent her the wind emoji in response to her story. But yep, that's fun.
It's a good way to learn. Well, I don't care what happens. I just want to see some teams put it in the gutter. That's always my wish.
I think they will. It's always a weird course. Like you look at it, they do like heaps of U-turns and there's heaps of roundabouts. So hopefully no high-speed crashes this year, but it always seems to be a bit twitchy.
You'd think though at this point now, so many people have either done the Spanish races or the Aussie races. There will be some who haven't raced, but you'd expect it to be a little less nervous. But yeah, of course, racing in crosswinds, there is always nerves because you know that so much is on the line. We've all done it. And if you miss that moment, the race is done. And so, you know, for a rider like Ushka, I imagine going to races like this, she can get some hard training in just by riding the front for a team in the sprint stages. But then, of course, they'll be wanting her to perform on stage 3, which is really important. But actually getting to the bottom of the climb, we've seen some riders got caught out and didn't even get there. So weren't even able to contend the climb. But it's, yeah, in one way, it's good practice for the season to come. I think she's improved a lot in big areas. But yeah, the crosswinds is a skill that some riders just will never master.
Yeah, but I think it's, as you say, it's really good practice for the season and also for the teams to look after to practice looking after that GC rider, because that's going to be more and more important as we head towards the Grand Tours, where, you know, seconds can be won or lost in a crosswind stage. And so to have a team that is conditioned in looking after that GC rider who might not be as confident in the crosswinds is a really good skill to have. Like Guy Riolini is a classic example.
Yes. Yeah.
Georgie, this tour would have suited you. I'm sad that you didn't get to race it. Maybe in the future, but I think it would.
I don't know, Gracie.
You would have been good.
Me and crosswinds, I remember texting Loretta Hansen in panic before my first Bruges de Parna and being like, how do I do an echelon? And I was on YouTube looking at echelon videos.
What is echelon?
ChatGPT, what is echelon?
Oh no, there was no ChatGPT at that stage. But yeah, it was then Matt Heyman. I missed the front split of 7 riders by I was the last rider not to get there. And Matt Heyman sat down with me that night and he's like, now we're going to look at this and tell you why he didn't get there. It's because the wind was coming from the left and I was hopping from group to group on the left side. And then I get just behind the front group and I blow up. So that's not how you ride a crosswind. The one thing Loretta did tell me is that in echelons, there's no friends. You just got to put your blinders on.
No, even sometimes your teammates bump you out. I had that experience and I was like, what the fuck, man? Like the teammates. But in the moment, you don't know who your teammate is sometimes. You just so like, you're on the
intuitive stem.
Yeah. And you're just trying to make sure that no one takes your wheel. Because once it's established and it's flowing, then it's okay. But like when you're trying to get in, my God, it's like a wall.
It's when you come up to that, like where the last rider before you got like the line of death and you just up to you just got to put your blinker on, be like, I'm coming to the gutter, and just hope that person then moves out of the way because you're coming through.
Yeah. Beautiful thing to watch. Yeah, so nice to be a part of.
I think we're going to see more of them though. Like, I think there's more appetite in the peloton to actually action them more, and to keep going.
Yeah, we haven't really seen it a lot, have we, in recent years? But like, you have to have good conditions for it as well.
Yeah, like the Surf Coast Classic, which was a race, the 0.2, I think it was between TDU and Cadell's in Geelong. There was a point where they tried to do echelons, like Jayco fully put it into the It wasn't televised, so I heard this secondhand, but it sounded like that they were really going for it. So I think, and then AG tried in Cadell's. I think there is appetite for them to at least try. So hopefully we see more teams spicing it up, particularly at UAE, which will be fun. As someone watching it now, not being in it.
This is the benefit of being part of the couch peloton, Georgie.
Oh,
you just sit back with my bag of popcorn and
I can make sweeping assumptions. It's fantastic.
And then you can come on the podcast and talk all about it afterwards and what people did wrong.
I know. I'd be like, you stuffed up. Back in my day, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I never made a mistake.
No, never. Never at all.
Well, I guess that there was other news as well that has happened over the past week, and we can't not mention, I don't know if you guys follow cross, but I'm in Belgium, so, it would just be sacrilegious, if that is the word, not to watch the cross. I didn't watch the men's race because it was pretty obvious who was going to win that, and he did. So for the elite women's race, Fen van Empel won her third world championship. To Lucinda Brand and Puck Peterson was third. That was a really, really exciting race. I mean, it was just Dutchie versus Dutchie versus Dutchie. But yeah, for Fem to take her third title, this cross season, I would argue, wasn't her strongest. She was super, super dominant the past 2 seasons, and it was like, okay, who's going to beat Fem? But going into this race, I thought, at least my feeling was it was a bit more wide open. And it was a bit sad for me to see Lucinda was just devastated rolling into the finish for second there. You could see it, just the pure emotion in her face when, Fem made her move in the end and got that gap on her. So really good race. If you didn't watch it, I would definitely go back and have a watch. Zoe Baxter took her second title in the U23 with Marie Schreiber and Leonie Bentfeld coming third. And in the under-19s, it was Lisa Revol first to Barbara Bukowska and Raphael Carrier, who is actually a Canadian rider. So cool to see someone from Canada up there on the podium. And then Demi Vollering has been doing the podcast rounds. So during her time on SD Works Pro Time, we didn't hear much from Demi. Just you got snippets.
Or anyone from that team.
Or anyone from that team. I don't think we've seen anyone from that team on podcasts other than Neve Fisher-Black doing Rider Diaries for us. So it's a hard team to infiltrate, and we have joked that when you're at the races, like my brief experience as a pretend journalist at the Tour de France Femme trying to go up to that team, I'm a pretty good person at going up to people and just having a conversation, but they terrify me. So I imagine that sort of flows on to other things, but yeah, it's a team it's a really hard team to get in and to get to know the riders and to hear from them. So I've been pretty impressed with the fact that Demi has now, as soon as she's switched teams within that first month, she's been doing the podcast rounds. She's been doing Dutch podcasts. She's been doing, I think she went on Geraint Thomas's podcast. Wouldn't recommend that one, to be honest. No offense to him, but he knows nothing about women's cycling, and it's very evident. And I don't take that back. So, Geraint, I'm sure you're a great guy and you know your side of the sport. But Demi, you shouldn't have gone on that podcast, man.
Come on our podcast.
Did you a disservice. Come on our podcast. We genuinely like women's cycling.
She was very gracious to him on that podcast. He got away with doing a bad interview.
He did.
She carried her. She carried it.
She carried the podcast. Did you listen to Georgie?
I've got a lot of thoughts about FDJ. I think I'm just going to get off on my soapbox a little bit about athlete branding and marketing. And I think they've done a phenomenal job with it. They are probably the first cycling team across men's and women's side that have really looked at the athlete as a holistic marketing tool, as a package deal. So I think in women's sport in general, we see this quite a lot. We see it with Alana Mayer from the US Rugby. We see it from Caitlin Clark over at the WNBA and also the NCAA. The Coco Gauff from tennis, Serena Williams, obviously. Women, we have the stories, we have the athletic ability, we have the marketability, but we also have the emotion and the curiosity as well. And we interact with our fan base. And I think FDJ have seen Demi as someone that hasn't done that previously, and so it's an untapped resource. And she's got a huge fan base already without doing that, because as we know with SD Works, they're quite they closed house with that kind of stuff. So FDJ have done a very clever marketing move with that. They've done an incredibly clever marketing move with Nike, getting them on board, because that's a brand that has supported women's sport across the spectrum. So I hope to see more of that in the women's peloton as well, because I think women's cycling is lagging a little bit behind the brand adoption that we see in other sports professionally. So like behind women's soccer, women's basketball, women's rugby, women's tennis. So it'd be great to see women's cycling step up to that plate, and I think they will. But yeah, it's great to see FDJ taking initiative there.
I'm so grateful you brought that up, because I did want to talk to you about that. I know that you've got quite a marketing business brain on your shoulders, and just watching everything that sort of happened over the past months. Their timing with all the press in the end was really good. Perfect. And we were doubting. We were like, why are you waiting for everything? But it was, the slowest news months is from end of October to basically the start of January. Nothing's happening. And here they were doing all this fantastic press. All the eyes were on what FDJ Suez were doing. And it was brilliant. They captured the audience instead of the typical boring, cycling camps and photo shoots that we see. It's just that stock standard stuff that people don't really pay attention to unless you're interested in the new kits. They went and did something completely different. Even that video with Nike, Demi Vollering, they started off the video with her running, not on a bike.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant. We're
seeing athletes like these are, I feel like so often with men's cycling, they're robots. Like they're blokes with sunglasses and a helmet. They look the same on a bike. And that's what we get. That's the offering. You don't see them off the bike with any kind of real person. I'm sure they do. Tom's, for instance, has great personality off the bike, but you don't see that as much. But like with women's cycling, you do see the personality. You see their expression on the bike as well. So you see Alex Manley's got the really long braid. A lot of the girls have painted fingernails. Like they've got like Chloe Dargett with their pink shoes. Like they've got these ways of expression that bring the spectator into their own story. And I think FDJ have noticed that Demi is someone who's outdoorsy. She enjoys, her life is more than just a bike. And they want to capitalize on that story. So I thought they did a really clever thing there with that Nike launch. And because Nike's not a bike brand traditionally, so it makes sense for them to do it without her on a bike.
Yeah, brilliant. I think a lot of cycling teams should take note, but then also companies out there. Like now if you haven't started investing in women's sport, what are you doing? The statistics are out there now. The research is there. I think it's the collective between Wasserman and Deloitte, some fantastic business insights there. And I think one of the key things I saw on LinkedIn was the difference in engagement rate between female athletes and male athletes is just completely different. I think, male athletes might have more followers, but the engagement between the fans is second to none with the women.
I think because female fans have had to work harder to engage with the sport, and so they're more invested in the athlete's journey themselves. Like, because it's no longer just, yes, of course, it's eyeballs on a TV screen. Like that's a big draw card, but engagement now goes beyond that. And we see it with social media, with podcasts. I think companies are now looking at the value add that female athletes have and how they're offering spans the whole spectrum of entertainment, essentially, from your phone all the way up to the TV screen and the Jumbotron. So I am really keen to see where this space extends in cycling. There's a huge cultural barrier in cycling that we have to overcome, and that has to do with like legacy beliefs there. But yeah, I'm keen to see what happens. Invest in women's sport, please.
Yeah, you kind of said it already. Like it's crazy that, what are you doing if you're not doing it? And especially post Paris, like that was such a moment, I think, too, in women's sport. Like that, there's so many great examples in the past 24 months of women's sport to show how powerful it really is. And, like Lauren and I were racing before it was on TV, and that was all we had was social media to share stuff. But it also meant that we had control over our own narrative to a point. And that was also quite powerful, and kind of speaking to what you were talking about, Georgie, and that you can paint a bigger picture. And it wasn't as valuable back then, but I think it's just been a snowball, a slowly building, but now rapid snowball of, wide reach.
Yeah. And I think another key aspect is we've got female voices in the sport, both in the decision-making level, but also in the commentary box, such as yourself, Gracie. Like that, we can't discount how important that is. The likes of Kate Berno at Zwift, leading the charge and investing in the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift is, that is just a phenomenal addition to the sport. To turn on women's cycling and hear women commentating about women is also massive. So, Gracie, you're doing really good things for the sport.
Yeah, you are. You're incredible. But, that's across the board. We just need to see more women in all positions within the sector, in everything. And Kate's a perfect example that I've said this before, is that we're not for Kate pushing this agenda that we do need a women's Tour de France Femme. She had to convince her company, and I love Zwift. They're fantastic. And they see the value in it because they've been there. All the top guys have been there on the ground and experienced it and actually really partook in the excitement. And I really enjoyed being there with the team last year and just seeing that these men were like, wow, this is happening. This is not a moment. This is a movement within women's sport.
Well, like fun activates change more quickly than protest. And Zwift have made the Tour de France fun. And also like Cassandra Spearing at Live Cycling to invest in like the Young Riders jersey at the Tour de France as well. Like there are more and more women in key executive positions to decide where the money goes. But as you say, Lauren, we need more. We need more of them. So please come into the industry.
Yes. And if you haven't signed up for the Uplift Industry Program and you're a woman who is in the sector, maybe you want to jump ship from your boring, investing job. You probably have a bunch of skills that could come over to our sector. Then you need to do it. So, yeah. All right. Other than being obsessed with women's cycling and the Summer of Cycling Down Under, what are we obsessed with this week?
I'll say one that'll make Lauren laugh, and it's because we were having some mum-related chats earlier this week, and I was, long story short, trying to say how we do the juggle, and we have a fully lit shared Google Calendar, Kimberly and I. So this is her obsession, and because it's her obsession, it's also my obsession because that is love, and I'm trying. It's not my strong suit. Every personality test I've ever done says planning an organization is an unrealized strength, and it's definitely been unrealized for a long time.
So much self-awareness. Well done.
I love it. Hey, Gracie, how many invites do you get in your inbox a day?
I'm not going to say because I'll protect that. That's
because I think I said this to you, Gracie.
It's very colorful though. Like our Google Calendar is like a rainbow. It's beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. I'd love to see it sometime because
makes our life good. Yep. So I said that for her and for you, Lauren.
I love it. Georgie?
Moss Dogs is a Australian TV show that airs on Sunday nights here in Australia on the ABC, and it is a competition between puppies. So it's fantastic.
What?
Yeah. No,
I'm meaning to watch this. It looks
so good. It's like Love Island, but for dogs. No, it's a bit more than that. But essentially, they get dog trainers. Like, so in Australia, like, similar to most parts of the world, we use dogs to muster sheep, cows, livestock, whatever, on big properties. So they have, like farmers who are used to training dogs, to do that kind of work. And, they select them about five or six in Australia every year. And each of those farmers gets a puppy, either a Kelpie or a Border Collie, to train for 12 months. And then at the end of the 12 months, they have an assessment and you get to find out who's the winner muster dog for the year. So cute. They had the first episode of the next season last night and I watched it, and there was a dog and he was a Kelpie and his name was Pesto, and I fell in love.
Isn't this season collies versus kelpies?
Collies versus kelpies. So yeah, it's very funny. Like they've got some of the owners are like, I absolutely could not train a collie. I'm purely a kelpie trainer. I could never possibly train a collie. And they get allocated a collie and they're like, oh my God, I love him. He's adorable. And then they cut them like Solo and the camera in the background. They're like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is going to be tricky. You're going to have to redig my training.
Wow, I need to put this on my watch list. I need more positivity.
Gracie, put it in the calendar.
Yeah, send it invite.
What color should I make it?
Well, one of my favorite dogs they've got colored collars, and it was orange.
There you go. She's going to have to move some things around. Probably orange is filled by now.
What I can do is watch it when I'm doing my Zoof session that's already in the hat. Zoof is orange too.
Oh,
You see, matches.
No, okay, but I want you to watch it and then we can compare notes as to who we think's going to win.
Okay.
We can include it in the end of podcast segment. So if like people want to check out, they can check it out.
Put it in the sub draft.
Yeah.
Pesto to win.
The mini draft.
Exactly.
Great. Mine is also a TV recommendation. I'm trying to think, is it Disney? I think it's on Disney. It's Goosebumps. Do you guys remember Goosebumps?
Oh my God, they turned it into a TV show.
It is. So they've done like a TV series in 2023, which I don't think took off. This is my understanding. But there's a new one with the guy who played Ross from Friends. And I'm loving it. It's actually really creepy. As a 36-year-old woman, I feel as scared as I was as a 10-year-old because I loved Goosebumps. They were like those really short TV segments. I don't know, it was on ABC or something growing up. And then you even had the Goosebumps books. So I'm like reliving my childhood a little bit.
Is the new stuff like creepy for kids or creepy for adults? Like,
I would not recommend a child watching this.
God. I don't know if I can watch it because I literally, I look under the bed if I get scared.
Well, I used to do that. I used to have a routine of checking under the bed, in the cupboards, and behind the curtains as a kid.
Oh, yeah, but I do it. I'm 30.
That's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay.
You can't unknow things.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that scary story of like the murderer under the bed licking the hand, like just.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
They're like old ghost stories.
Yeah, that one.
Around the campfire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Not as cute and fuzzy as Georgie's, but if you were someone who watched or read the books of Goosebumps, I recommend it. It's
you watch Goosebumps and then you watch Muster Dogs and then you can go to bed.
Good point. And I do have I have this dingo plush toy that I bought Harry when I was in Australia that kind of looks like a Kelpie. So there we go.
You need to watch it over there. Watch it on iView.
What's iView?
No, you need a VPN if you watch that overseas.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's it for today's podcast. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk about the UAE tour. Thanks, Gracie and Georgie, for helping me man the 4 while Abby's away. And if you have any questions or anything that you want to ask the pod, just drop them in the Discord and we will answer them next week. So have a great week, everyone.